Quite a party. Great turnout today. First off, I just want to make a few opening comments. Thank everyone for coming and address all the community leaders that are here today, many of which are standing behind me, but there's also a lot of people in the audience, a lot of people watching online that really have galvanized around the issue of IM27. I think what I've found in the last couple of weeks is there's a lot of people who want to talk about this issue, who want to start standing in solidarity around some of the concerns we have around IM27. And so the organizers of this event are not the campaign Protecting South Dakota Kids. This is just me being concerned about this issue and reaching out to some of my friends and saying, hey, do you feel the same way? And it's been overwhelming, almost, to say the least. So I want to thank all the people that are here today who are here to just talk about some of the concerns and issues we see with legalized recreational marijuana in our communities. I've spent the last 2.5 years, dealing with crime, dealing with narcotics, opening up a place called The Link to deal with substance abuse. And the thought of introducing another vice in our community right now gives me a lot of concern and a lot of pause, to be very frank. We don't have a war on drugs. I know people use that term, but we do have a war on violent crime, and we have a war on crime. And drugs are often a part of that. And so we have to continue to do what we can to ensure our communities are staying safe, our kids are staying safe. We're taking care of the Sioux Falls that we all love, the state that we all love. And you're going to hear from a few people today on some of their concerns about what legalized rec would do to that state we love. I want to share just a few stats, and some of the experts are going to speak today. You're going to hear from Sheriff Milstead, State's Attorney Hager. You'll hear from our chamber president about some of the workforce issues that legalized cannabis creates in an already 2% unemployment environment. But one of the things that concerns me, people ask me what keeps me up most at night right now. And besides my 2 Shih Tzus that usually have to go out about 2 a.m., it's the topic of crime and keeping crime manageable and keeping crime under control. And the nice thing about being in South Dakota's position right now is that we have a track record of other states that have legalized recreational cannabis. So we can look at what has happened in other states, other communities that have done this. We're not just using hyperbole, we're not just using fear tactics, we're just using data. And there's a lot of different data sources that people will use to shape facts and twist the narrative. But I want to share some stats from some credible agencies, in this case, the FBI. These are the violent crime increases in states in the last 8 years, and actually through 2019, which is the most recent FBI data, states that have legalized rec cannabis. And the crime has grown tremendously in those communities. Can you attribute that solely to cannabis? No. You can probably contribute more of it to narcotics and narcotics-related crime, of which there's meth challenges and there's heroin issues and there's other things. But as the sheriff will likely allude to, meth is not an innocent bystander in crime that's related to narcotics. We also have the topic which we're dealing a lot with in Sioux Falls right now as well, and that's the topic of homelessness. What are we doing about the increase in homelessness? What's going to help our people who are experiencing chronic homelessness? And it's a fact that a lot of our people that are homeless are experiencing mental health challenges and are experiencing addiction challenges. It's a fact. And the top 10 states with the highest homeless rate all have legalized rec, except for Hawaii. Hawaii has only medicinal. We're currently 21st. We're way higher than I'd like us to be in our homeless rate for per capita. If we think that legalizing rec will improve that number, we're mistaken. And it is going to provide bigger challenges that we're going to deal with at places like The Link, at places like Bishop Dudley, UGM, for people who are going to have another vice by which to potentially lead them to a path towards homelessness. And then the third topic that I just want to address, and then I'm going to turn it over to Sheriff Milstead here, is our kids and you guys know I'm a dad. I got a 17-year-old, soon to be 17, woman, a 14-year-old, and a 10-year-old. And I'm trying to build a community in Sioux Falls that's good for kids and families. That's my focus. That's the theme of my administration. Every meeting we're in, we're saying, is this good for kids and families? Is this decision good for kids and families? And I have a very hard time and have yet to see any information that says passing legalized recreational cannabis will be good for the kids in our community and will be good for the families in our community. And you look at states that have legalized cannabis and what's happened to their youth drug rate. And this is, again, from the National Centers for Drug Abuse, okay? This isn't anticannabis.org, and people use all these crazy sources to me to claim their position. I go to reputable sources. And you can see that the increase, teenagers are more likely to use drugs than the average American teen in these states which have rec. And in South Dakota, we're already 15% higher than the average teen. We're already on a bad trajectory. I don't feel that legalizing what's currently a Schedule I narcotic, and that's not me, that's the feds, a Schedule I narcotic, will make that number go down. Our neighbors to the north, I'm going to lose the percentage, but they're single digits up in North Dakota. They even don't have the challenge that we have here in South Dakota right now. So for those reasons and for others, I'm really encouraging people to take a good hard look at that issue and think about, is this right for Sioux Falls and for South Dakota? And I don't feel it is, and I encourage our voters to vote that way when they go to the polls on November 8th. I'd like to turn it over to Sheriff Mike Milstead, who's going to bring a little bit of a public safety angle to this conversation. Sheriff?
Thank you, Mayor. It's interesting. I just want to touch on some of the public safety aspects, and it's interesting that the proponents of IM27 kind of push a retired police officer out in front of the TV and say that marijuana is not a problem. Marijuana is, people are mellow. I'm not sure if it's a memory thing, but the reality is just in our own community, somebody who goes to church with us, her son was murdered on the northwest part of town over marijuana and money deal gone bad, murdered by 2 individuals. A young man was killed in a car crash on Western Avenue by Medco. Another marijuana deal that went bad, and there was a chase involved with people involved. A young man by the name of Michael was murdered at the Sioux Empire Fairgrounds, gunned down in the fairgrounds over a marijuana deal and meth. 17-year-old shot at a car about 2 years back, went through the car, almost hit a child in the car. They'd met to try to do a marijuana deal. And on North Cleveland Avenue, individual shot dead over a marijuana deal gone bad. So I got to tell you, we have significant issues with marijuana in our community. That marijuana gets involved, and oftentimes we see marijuana and methamphetamine. So to say that it's only one would be, I'd be remiss to say that. I think that we have to think about traffic safety in Colorado. The people who tested positive for marijuana use has increased 135% in auto accidents since recreational marijuana was legalized in Colorado. I chair the National Sheriff's Drug Enforcement Committee, so I interact with sheriffs across America, and in particular have conversations with sheriffs in legalized states. The proponents will tell you that the black market will go away. Their ads actually say, well, what happens is the black market leaves and goes away because people are going to buy the legal stuff, and that's, nothing could be further from the truth. You're being lied to. Sheriff in California I spoke to recently, in their county, it's about 85% of the marijuana available in their county is black market marijuana. If you get a chance, research the Emerald Triangle, which is the San Bernardino area of California, and how Mexican drug cartels have moved into private land owned by U.S. citizens taken over the private land and opened up major marijuana grows because of the market for marijuana in California. Talked to sheriffs in Colorado who said, if they tell you that the black market's being eliminated, nothing could be further from the truth. Our black market in Colorado is thriving more than it ever has before. So please don't take the word of individuals who tell you that marijuana is not an issue in Sioux Falls or in Minnehaha County or in South Dakota. Don't take their word for the idea that maybe law enforcement supports recreational marijuana, which we don't. There's 66 elected sheriffs in South Dakota. They were recently polled. 64 of our 66 sheriffs came out as opposed to IM27. And the other two just said, I'm going to wait and see how the vote comes out. And so please, the one thing that I would recommend for you, and I said this before, that I credit the mayor, you know, people would assume the sheriff's going to be against this, but I'm against it for good reason. We've had more time to understand what marijuana, how it impacts children, the dangers associated. We don't have to experiment it. There's states like Colorado that are showing us what happens. And there's interesting reports, and I appreciate the mayor's position because it's you know, he talked about how he wants to make sure that we do right things for friends or for family and for children. That's critically important. So I would suggest that if you're out there trying to decide whether or not you want to vote yes or no on IM27, you don't have to take my word for it. You don't have to take the mayor's word for it. You all know a school teacher, a doctor, a nurse, a treatment provider, a police officer, a highway patrolman, a state trooper, a deputy sheriff. Ask them. Pick up the phone and give them a call and say, would recreational marijuana be the right thing for us to do in South Dakota? Will it make our state better? And I think you'll get the answer. And the idea, too, that we're going to bring all this tax money in, Colorado's, for all the money they take in for marijuana taxes, it represents less than 1% of the budget in Colorado, of the state budget. And the cost of Colorado is roughly $4.50 for every dollar in tax. So it's unfortunate. I mean, my stomach churns a little bit when I see the ads claiming that marijuana is going to be good for South Dakota and that's the right thing to do, because it's not. And, you know, my job is the preservation of peace and the protection of life and property. I'm taking a strong position. I can tell you why I'm voting no on IM27, and I just listed them. It's not the right thing for South Dakota. So with that, I'll pass it on to the next presenter.
So I'm the Minnehaha County State's Attorney, Daniel Hager. I appreciate the opportunity to stand with these leaders on an important issue. As the discussion has kind of shaped around this measure and marijuana in general, there are a few things that I'm really left with, quite frankly, some frustration with what's being represented out in the public. So I want to talk about some of those things that I think are myths and just clarify what's happening in Minnehaha County with marijuana. This measure passing is not going to reduce incarceration in Minnehaha County for individuals with marijuana. That's not happening. Right now, with our current bond schedule, and I'm not trying to get technical, but when law enforcement officers encounter someone who just has marijuana, so I'm not talking about those cases where there's methamphetamine, because very often those cases where people are possessing methamphetamine, they also have marijuana. Not talking about the violent crime where very often they're also possessing some of those illegal substances. But cases where simple possession of marijuana, they're being cited. So they're being given a piece of paper that says come to court. They're not being arrested. When they come into court and we're prosecuting those cases, we aren't asking for them to be incarcerated. Okay? The judges aren't incarcerating those individuals. What we are doing is we are trying to give them opportunities to go through treatment and break free from some of that substance use. So this idea that we are trying to reduce mass incarceration by passing these measures, that's not true. There's been discussion about collateral consequences. So they talk about, well, we have to pass this to allow access to student loans, to housing, to jobs. My office is dedicated to ensuring that justice happens in every single case, including those with simple possession of marijuana. We will always look at those collateral consequences and make sure that those individuals are given opportunities to avoid those collateral consequences. They can go through treatment. There are other alternatives. I'm serious that we will make sure that these individuals have a chance to reconnect with their community. Now, I believe in candor, and far too often in my role as elected state's attorney, I see these families, children, individuals who've had their lives decimated by substance use. And I do not believe that passing a measure that sprints us towards additional substance use is a good thing for our community or a good thing for public safety. Thank you.
All right, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jeff Griffin. I'm president of the Greater Sioux Falls Chamber of Commerce. I appreciate the mayor's leadership and invitation this morning. I often say the Chamber of Commerce exists between business, government, and community, and this is no exception at all. So somewhat redundant, but in a different line of work, working with chamber executives across the country who I know through my network, same thing. The experience is a negative one, and specifically to the workforce component. To have a legal state drug that is still illegal on the federal level creates some confusion in employment law and some barriers and some difficulties for our employers as well as the employees, quite frankly. The second point is workplace safety. It is not a comparison. Impairment is the quantification of impairment is more difficult. And workplace safety and employers trying to do the right thing to keep their employees safe and a safe work environment. Why would we initiate this legality to compromise that for employers trying to do the right thing and employees trying to work in a safe environment? And a third piece that I don't hear talked about enough, we have some employers want a healthy community. They want healthy employees. And we've made great progress in getting employers to invest in their employees in terms of mental health, addiction services, health services. Why would we put them in a position like this to strain their resources that can be aimed at such good in treatment of people? We know people have paths to recovery from alcoholism and from mental health issues and domestic violence issues. There are difficult paths, but there are paths, and we have good employers willing to invest in those paths. Why put this added burden on them to make that task more difficult and more financially impossible and really detract away from the other investments they're trying to make in their business and in their employees? Some of you also know I spent about 17 years in juvenile corrections before becoming a Chamber of Commerce executive. And so I've seen this play out in kids and young people and access. This isn't, and I also came from Illinois, so I didn't bring this with me, but Illinois had legalized recreational marijuana, and I saw the same thing the sheriff talked about. The black markets didn't go away. It increased, and it was not good. And the taxation thing, you know, we're blessed. We don't need the revenue here. We have other sources of the revenue, and that's always a losing bet anyways, because the treatment costs and the cost of the community go up, and any amount of tax does not reconcile that. So like the sheriff and like the mayor, I've interacted with colleagues across the country on this subject, and I can tell you, chambers of commerce where marijuana has become recreational legal, they have a tougher task for their employers than we have here. So I'll turn it back to the mayor, I believe, and I think we're going to have some questions. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Jeff and Sheriff, State's Attorney Hager. Those are the folks we wanted you to hear from today. So we'd certainly open up the floor for one of the four speakers here if there's any questions that you might have for us.
Is that the name of your organization, Reject IM27?
It's just for the poster board today. There's no organization, there's no formal committee. Being palms up, this printing today is paid for by a PAC called Next Generation Leadership PAC, which looks at the future leadership and future kids and family issues in our state.
So it's a problem, drugs are a problem. Assuming this is rejected, I've been able to buy weed my entire life, and it's been illegal my entire life. I don't buy weed, but I know where I can walk up in the whole neighborhood and get it. What's going to change after the election to try and solve the problem that you laid out? I mean,
Well,
getting shot is bad.
Right. Yeah, the question, to read it back, is, let's say if this fails, then what are we doing about it? There is weed in our communities. There's been weed in our communities since the 50s. And so I think the answer to that is we continue trying different things to not only get rid of the narcotics, but deal with the treatment and the education piece. And that's, you never spike the football, but I had a board meeting this morning with several people for the link. We've put millions of dollars into that place the last couple years to treat people experiencing chronic addiction issues. We have our executive director of the link, our nurse manager. They can tell you how many people come in there that are dealing with substance abuse and marijuana issues. And so we're going to continue to invest in resources that will help people get the resource and the help they need to get off. Do you ever solve the issue? No, you don't. But does that mean because something's readily available, you just throw your hands up and say, well, it's out there anyway, we might as well give everybody access to it? I don't think that's the answer either. In California, somewhat related to that, they have a vote in 2 weeks to ban flavored vapes statewide. You know why? Because kids, they're known to target kids. President Biden wants to ban menthol cigarettes because they target communities of color. Okay? So we're going to ban menthol smokes, and we're going to ban flavored vapes, and we're going to introduce flavored marijuanas and flavored edibles. I mean, it's silly. It almost makes no sense. So we're not going to give up, but we're also not going to make it easier. I don't know if any partners have any further thoughts on that, but other questions?
What's changed from 2020? Amendment A and medical were both on the ballot. I don't think the opposition back then was kind of a meeting like this. What has changed or motivated a gathering like this today on it?
Great question. The question was what changed from 2020 to today? I think a couple things. One is, at least myself, I was pretty busy in 2020. I was getting death threats over mask mandates and other things and was preoccupied with COVID. We also saw the effects of what I consider voter confusion with the lumping of medicinal and recreational on one sign, on one TV ad, on one ballot, that the voter felt you needed both. You need to vote for these to get my grandmother who has cancer medicine. Even the current ad that the proponents are running says we're preventing cancer victims from getting the medicine they need. That's baloney. It's a straight up lie. We have medicinal dispensaries that are open in this community. If you are a cancer patient and you need medicinal, you have options right now to go get that. So this has nothing to do with medicinal. I want to make that very clear to the community. This is Sour Stone kids. This is doobies. This is the recreational, let's have fun, vice marijuana. And so we want to just be very, very clear on that. So I think that's changed. I also think there's a wake-up call. Like this voter confusion issue in 2020 got this thing passed, and luckily it was written poorly so that we get another bite at the apple to determine, is this really right for our state? And I think the showing of support here, if you look at the funding reports, almost all of the money that the proponents have raised on this are from 3 or 4 cannabis companies in our state, okay? And I'd encourage you to look at the campaign filings for the opponents and see that most South Dakotans don't feel this is right for our state. Other questions? Yeah, follow-up?
Yeah, I wanted to also, you brought up the federal ruling on it. I know President Biden just issued that he wants them to look at that Schedule 1. Regardless of the election, it sounds like federally there might be some things. Where do you think the conversation, obviously we're focused on South Dakota here, but federally it's not going to go away as a way that it can change. I guess any reaction to Biden's looking into how this is scheduled?
Well, there's a lot of things I don't agree with President Biden, but that's one where we're going by the current laws on the books today. We can't legislate on what-ifs. We have to legislate on the rules federally, state, and locally that we have. And currently, it is a Schedule 1 narcotic. And so we have to legislate based on that. If that changes, there'll maybe be a new ballot initiative, and we'll deal with it at that time.
If it does pass, are you going to, how is the mayor and city infrastructure going to react to that? Are you going to try and limit the scale of it in the city? That puts you in a pretty bad position. If it passes and you have to enact the will of the people, but opposed to it.
Yeah.
What can you do as mayor to further restrict the sale of it in the city?
Well, I think it's important to realize that IM27 only decriminalizes an ounce or less. There's no provision for sale of marijuana in our state. I don't know if a lot of people understand that. So this does not make the sale of marijuana legal. It decriminalizes ownership. Am I correct in saying that, state's attorney? So the legislature is going to have their hands full on figuring out, okay, now what do we do that this is decriminalized? How many dispensaries do we allow? What's the THC levels that we allow? I mean, advertising, all the stuff that goes around with making it legal. They may put restrictions on cities that we have to have dispensaries. They may say, local control, you guys decide. Colorado Springs, a great example. They've never had dispensaries in their community. And so they made that decision locally in Colorado Springs. It kind of forced the dispensaries to the burbs in those other communities. So it's too early to say what that will look like based on the one subject that IM27 is addressing.
Tell them what to do, what you want.
If I could tell them what to do, what I would say is we have what's called home rule in Sioux Falls. I think that's a muscle that we would certainly flex on this. But I can say other vices we limit. We limit the number of liquor licenses. We've limited medical dispensaries. It's not going to be a cannabis free fall in Sioux Falls if this would happen, and we did have to put this here. We need to be pragmatic about it if it would pass. But that's a what if. I'm very confident, even based on some recent polling, that the momentum's in the right direction, and we won't have to deal with this come the 23 legislative session.
Well, a lot of focus has been on shops opening up, and that would be a negative effect. But what would be wrong with just decriminalizing that owner? If nothing else involved, if there's no violence, there's no matter, what would be wrong with that?
Well, I think the sheriff just went through a lot of that. Let me give you a real example. If I open Paul's dispensary and I sell weed, and I got to pay a license, and I have to go through the testing, and the state's got to inspect me, why wouldn't I just go grow some out by Canton and do whatever THC levels I wanted, not have to pay a dispensary fee, not have to tax, deal with all that, and just sell it? That's the black market crime and issues that grow tremendously. So that's what we're worried about. And that's a very real example. Oregon just passed a $25 million emergency appropriation in their last session, specifically to deal with the black market because of what's happening in Oregon. So the legal guys are getting run out of business. The legal dispensaries aren't making money anymore because it's become a black market crime. So those are the things we're worried about.
Mike, let me just add, from my perspective, to answer your question, what if let's just make it legal? Well, what happens, number one, is there's a huge increase in the use of marijuana when it's legalized. Right now, across about a block over here, Minnesota Avenue, speed limit's 30 miles an hour. Most people drive around 30 miles an hour. You know why? Because that's law. Most people are law-abiding citizens. When recreational marijuana, if it passes, or in states where it's passed, the use of marijuana increases considerably, especially among kids, because they get it from mom and dad's stash. They get it from a friend that buys them for them. So, and guess if there's a lot more marijuana used in South Dakota, if this is to pass, then there's a lot more attractive, it's a lot more attractive to drug cartels to bring marijuana and set up marijuana in South Dakota because they know there will be a significant increase in marijuana use. What happens if it passes? Hey, look, I enforce the law, the mayor, we enforce the laws, we'll follow the laws. If the people decide to pass it, we'll adjust what we do. We'll do the best we can to look for and uncover drug traffickers. But the reality is, when a deputy sheriff stops somebody and they have a pound of marijuana, there's no way to know if that came from a dispensary. There's no way. So that's why the drug cartels love this idea. They love the idea. The drug pushers, the ones that are pushing our methamphetamine right now, they love the idea of legalized marijuana because my officers can't tell the difference between legalized or non-legalized. So once it's in their hand, it's all free. And so they're scot-free. And keep in mind, this IM27 was written by industry. It's like Philip Morris writing the tobacco laws. So I think you have to consider those things. If it passes, it passes. But I think the will of the voters will be different this time. I think they understand it more clearly. We've had 2 more years to understand what happens in states like Colorado that have passed recreational marijuana. We've seen the impact on kids. We've seen the impact on traffic fatalities. We've seen the impact on overdoses. We've seen the impact in the emergency departments. There's nothing good about legalizing recreational marijuana in my mind, and that's why I'm voting against it.
This may be for the state's attorney. If it doesn't, if it's rejected, what is one law that we need changed to be more effective at reducing the amount of marijuana? What is it that's going, what do you need? You need more money, you need more cops, and what is it?
So if this is rejected, I think that we do some of the good things that we're doing now. We have good law enforcement who's working to root that out of our community. When those cases come to my office, we're prosecuting them. We're trying to connect those individuals who are stuck in the addiction phase of their life with treatment providers. We're offering them ways to reconnect to the community. There's not a magic law that I can say, oh, if we just had that, then all this substance use would be rooted out of our community. But it takes individuals supporting each other, you know, coming alongside those children saying, hey, here's how we're going to mentor you. This isn't a lifestyle that you want to go down. Here are good things that we can do. Here are good jobs that you can get, right? It really takes a community approach, and that's why it's important to have all these individuals here, right? Because you don't just need one mayor saying, hey, here's what we do to tackle this problem. You don't have one state's attorney. You don't have one law enforcement officer. Everyone here plays a role in that.
So that's not a crime issue. This isn't going to make, whether or not this passes, isn't going to have any effect on crime going down. Whether, if it doesn't pass, crime's not going down. That's not what you're saying. What you're saying is that you need to treat it somewhere else.
Well, I don't think that this measure helps us combat crime at all. It's the exact opposite. If this passes,
If it doesn't pass, crime's not going down.
correct.
Right?
Yeah.
So where is it in the process that you need to fight marijuana use?
I think the best place to start is with youth, right? Making sure that they don't view marijuana use as something that's attractive to them, helping them find a purpose. When we have adults, whether they're young adults, whether they're 30, 40, 50-year-olds, trying to say, hey, this is not a lifestyle that you should be embracing. You can be healthier. You can escape some of the mental health issues if you are reconnecting with your community. The people who are turning to these substances, whether it's marijuana, methamphetamine, fentanyl, they are searching for something in their life, right? They're trying to fill some of that void. So we can help them find ways to be productive and be a good member of society. I don't think that marijuana use, methamphetamine use, fentanyl, that's not the right direction.
But are we not doing that now?
We're trying, sure.
Any other questions? Go ahead, yeah.
I have a very good question. One, I want to thank this illustrious group for putting this together. One of the things that I encounter when I encounter the proponents of IM27 is the perception of harm. They believe that this is adult use only, legalization of Woodstock weed or low potency marijuana. What do you have to say about potency issues and some of the edibles and the other stuff that we're seeing in these other states that have legalized recreational THC, commercialized THC products?
Yeah, so I've researched this myself. I researched some, maybe you saw it, the Sour Stoned kids, which look like Sour Patch Kids. I did some research on those this weekend because my kid inhales bags of Sour Patch Kids, and the branding looks very similar. And if she got her hands on a bag of 12 Sour Stoned kids and digested them, we would have a very dangerous situation with my 10-year-old daughter. And she did not see the difference between the bags of the candies. And people say, well, that's a responsible parent then that needs to keep them out of harm's reach. I wish every parent was responsible. We wouldn't have a lot of problems we have in this. That gives people a lot of credit. There's a lot of parents that aren't that responsible. And so the THC contents of the weed my dad smoked and sold on the bus, which he tells me about, this is not ditch weed. This is high potency, high THC weed that is even higher if it's not regulated. So that black market stuff that's grown and put into circulation, when it's not regulated, laced with fentanyl and the laced with other things also becomes a concern. So it's dangerous. All right, any other questions for us?
Mayor, can I double down on one thing?
You bet,
It was
Les.
asked about where the group was before, and you answered. I just want to be perfectly clear. We were here with the coupling of the medicinal and the recreation confused the matter, right? The chamber, as an example, were neutral on medicinal and opposed recreational all along the path. And for the reasons cited, all of us have had a family member with cancer or MS or something, and we'd want anything to help soothe their pain, right? This is a completely different matter. We've been opposed to that. And this idea of, well, you know, what's it going to solve? You know, how low do you want to lower the bar? You know, we need to keep expectations high. We have high expectations for ourselves, for our workforce, and this is just compromising what we can be. And we want to keep the bar high for ourselves and for our future. So thank you, Mayor.
Yep. Good closing word with that. Thank you for coming today. We appreciate your time. Thank you, everybody behind me.